Thank you for that introduction, and it's great to be here. As Tomas said, my name is Baker Evans, and I look after strategy and business development for the Science and Technology division, pieces of it within Elsevier. Typically, I focus on products such as Science Direct and Scopus and the Performance and Planning Fund suite called SciVal that Alexander mentioned earlier. But today I'm going to step back a little bit and talk about mobility. Content mobility, people's mobility, the use of technology in a mobile sense. It was about a year ago when my colleagues and I were talking about some things that we heard in different conversations and reading, and we said, well, we probably need to do something a little more official and a little more thoughtful and planned around this whole mobility thing. And so my team got together and started off with a couple of objectives, and they were very modest. The first one was to help define the space and create a common language of mobility around mobile devices, applications, websites, and things like that. The second was looking at those trends in that space and saying and determining, is there a correlation or a way that we can match that or test it with scientific researchers? Because most of the trends that we'll find in the broad space are about everyone and their mother. It's not about researchers. And the third was really, once we figure this bit out, what are we going to do with that information? What's our next step? So I promise this presentation will not hurt. Not implying that any earlier presentations have hurt. But when we started this project, it really did hurt because all of the topics and all of the things that we were learning of, for me it was very new, for my whole team it was very new, and what we found out is that for almost, not everybody in the building, but it's very new for a lot of people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Mobinomics. What are the myths? What are the realities of this? The second piece, these are the trends in the marketplace, and these are broad, sweeping things that are going on. Many of you will hear this and you go, ah, duh, yeah, I've seen that before. But it's interesting to see it in print sometimes. The second piece, I'll talk about how we brought that down to scientific researchers. And is there a way to correlate these broad trends down to researchers? And the third piece is our mobile ambition. What are we going to do about this? Are we going to do anything? So the first couple of slides are going to be about data points. So what you'll see here in the next few slides are just broad-scale trends. And this is what we learned when we went through this. And some of them are very impressive. The first one is that smartphone devices, smartphones are just phones that are doing more things than your old clamshell phone. They have internet access, they can access email and things like that. They have good hardware, good software, and good big screens generally. But they're going to outpace shipments of both PCs and laptops in 2012. Now, there's still a lot of laptops and PCs sold, so these numbers are not insignificant. But this is a big indication that smartphones are coming, they're here, and they are actually growing in volume. Another thing we found out was 3G. And 3G is what happens or what makes these smartphones smart. It helps them work. If we had these great devices 2 years ago, well, they wouldn't be so great. If you think about plugging your phone or your laptop into the phone jack years ago and getting dial-up, it wasn't that exciting, it took too long. But 3G is making these things possible. And a very simple definition is that it allows voice and data packets, many, many more of them, to travel much, much faster. So it can process things faster. But it's really witnessed astronomical growth. If you look at the USA, about a third of the people in the whole country have access to 3G. In the UK, about 30 million. So these are some big numbers, and it's growing. But if you look at the more developing countries on the bottom right, where Brazil has 148% growth, in Indonesia, 57% growth, and of course China, which in these sorts of areas, you keep hearing this again and again, astronomical, crazy breakout growth, 1,000%. So then we looked at e-commerce. So what goes on with e-commerce in the mobile space? So, and I'm going to engage with you a little bit about raising hands, or sometimes just think about the question. But how many of you got nervous 10 years ago booking your flight with your credit card on the internet? Most people are like, oh, I'm not putting my, somebody's going to steal it. Well, how many of you, by show of hands, have made a transaction using your mobile device? So maybe 6, 7 people. I bet in a year from now, half the room will go up. In 2 years, everyone's going to go up. And that's what's indicating here, is that in America, at least, the percentage of retail sales that are transacted over the computer is about 5 or 6%. And you can see that that growth line is relatively calm over the last several years. But on the bottom right-hand side, you can see the curve of that growth line of mobile device transaction is growing much faster. And I think one of the things that we found through this study is that even the predictions by the smartest people, wherever they are, about how many units will sell and how many transactions we'll have, no one's really that good at it because things are changing so quickly. It's almost like the dot-com era, a decade ago when people said everything is going to happen on the internet and nobody believed it. And it's really happening. And this trend is happening. So then we talked about, we looked at mobile internet access. It's a global phenomenon. Everyone across the board is using mobile devices. And when they have mobile devices, they are accessing the internet. And a study that we looked at with about 1,700 respondents pulled this data together. So on average, about 18% of those who have a mobile device are using the internet more often because they have a mobile device. But that's not just using the mobile device to access the internet more, it's using the internet more, sort of, period. So it drives usage to the internet from the desktop, it drives usage to the internet from the mobile device. And so what has happened, and when we started looking at this, we didn't know it, but when a mobile device has internet access, many people are looking at information on there, they're emailing it to themselves. When they get to work, they open up their desktop so they can see it a little bit better, or they can actually look around the internet a little bit better. So having a mobile device with internet access is incorporating the use of regular desktop websites. And then finally, a little bit to what I was just saying, is that most people are using mobile alongside of the internet. There's very few people there's very few people who are only using mobile devices to look at content, to look for weather, news, sports, information about their business. You can look at some of the percentages, 2% stock quotes, 10% of the people for weather. I suspect that little skinny band of red are young people who don't have a phone at their house, don't have internet at their house, and the only thing that they're willing to pay for is a mobile device, because why would I pay for cable? Why would I pay for a phone? Why would I pay for internet access? I've got it all right here. I think that's probably what that is. But what you see is about 1/3 of all of these content areas are accessed by both mobile and the PC, and this is going to grow. I think if I came back and stood here in 2 years, that red line is going to expand, and that gray line, the PC only, is going to shrink. And that will happen over time. So that's sort of the overall trend space that we looked at. And there was loads and loads of data out there. We studied lots and lots and lots. But then we said, well, these are all great ideas. These are great trends, and now we understand it. We have a language. We know what mobility means. We know what 3G means and things like that. And we said, well, that's great for the world, but what about researchers? How does it connect, or does it connect? And so then we went into this space, and we said, how do we try to connect this information, see if it's real? And so we looked at smartphone device growth. You guys can hear that too, huh? I'm getting nervous up here. Smartphone growth is 30% annually. In the STM space, it's about 21%. And what we found is that there's great penetration already. Most researchers have a smartphone device. They've had it for a long time. They're early adopters of technology. They've got these things. And I didn't do it before I came here, but I wanted to. But I'll bring out one data point about the right-hand side, which is really interesting to us. We looked at, the bars represent the different devices, whether it's an iPod or a Nokia phone or a BlackBerry or something like that. And the slices are how many units are sold per year. And when we did this analysis, this was in the beginning of the year, the Android operating system and phone from Google, it was sort of just being talked about. It wasn't even out yet. And the analyst had predicted, it's very small under 2010, 0.4. So 400,000 units would be shipped. And I guarantee you that it's over 1 million. Or, sorry, Yeah, over 1 million. Because, that's what I was referring to, is that even those who are predicting these things, who are paid big money to figure these things out, it's growing faster than people can understand. And this device, the Droid device, I'm sure is much higher than it shows right there. Then we looked at what content do researchers want? What are they going to do with a mobile device? And Heather will talk a bit about this later, and so I'll just do a little bit here. It makes sense. So if you look from the left to the right, researchers want A&I content. Then they want to look at full-text articles. And then they want to look at books in a decreasing order of importance. And there's two main drivers behind this that make a whole lot of sense. The first is, who wants to sit around and read a book on a screen that big? No one. It's just too much content on a little screen. Now, would I look at an abstract? Sure, it's pretty easy. Just click in, take a look, go out. So it's the screen size, that's part of it. The second part is time. So no one's going home to their house, except the young group that I was mentioning earlier, and using their device to do everything that they want to do on the internet and read a book. Mobility represents moving around and waiting for the bus or waiting for the tube or sitting in an airport waiting for the snow to clear from Gatwick or whatever it is. So, can't believe it's closed down, but it is.